Welcome back to Elden Ring. In this video we are taking a look at 6 more broken OP weapons you must have. We recently did a video for the 6 most broken OP weapons, and I mentioned in that one that I found 24 weapons that rank way above anything else in the game. So this is going to be video 2 of like a mini series. There will be 4 videos altogether. If you haven't seen the first video, I'll leave it linked in the description and the pinned comments. You can go check that one out as well. And just quickly, before we do get into this one, if you're not currently subbed to the channel, make sure you do sub, turn notifications on. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. All support is greatly appreciated. And if you want to support me further as a creator, then check out the links in the description. And also leave a comment on the video of what your favourite weapon in the entire game is. And let's get into it. So, weapon number 1 in this video is the Sword of St. Trina. This is going to scale with Strength, Intelligence and Dexterity, a C for Dex and a D for Strength and Intelligence. The requirements are 10 Strength, 12 Dex and 14 Intelligence, and this one has a passive effect to cause sleep build-up. And we are going to be taking a look at the skill Mists of Slumber, which costs 20 FP to use, and is the main reason I absolutely love this weapon. So if we come down to these enemies here, and I use my left trigger, we are going to cast this, like, cloud of sleep, if you want to call it that. You have to be fairly close to the enemy, sometimes even hitting them, but you'll see that this guy's gone nanites. He is out for the count, and depending on the enemy, some enemies it will last 2 or 3 seconds, some it's going to last all the way up to like 30 seconds. But if I come over to this guy whilst he's sleeping, and I use my right bumper, I do a crit where like you dig into their chest, like you stab them straight through the chest, and it deals a lot of damage. But not only that, if I use the skill again, you'll see that afterwards, our sword is now procced with the sleep. The only downside to this weapon is that if you are hit once, that sleep on the weapon comes off it straight away. I don't know why it does it. It's like kind of irritating to not have it on there even after hit just for a set amount of time. And when it comes to making enemies sleep, some of the bigger enemies in the game as well, if I hit this giant, if we use the left trigger, we hit him, and yeah, he is going for a nice little nap. But it opens him up for a crit. So there you'll see that we dealt some very, very nice damage. So that is weapon number 1, the Sword of St. Trina. Weapon number 2 is the Moonveil Katana, and this is used by a lot of Elden Ring players. It's mainly going to be for a magic-based build. With the Sword of St. Trina, you can scale it up with a bit of magic. The attribute scaling for this one is E for Strength, C for Dexterity, and B for Intelligence. This will also cause blood loss build-up with a rating of 50. The requirements are 12 Strength, 18 Dex, and 23 Intelligence. And again, like most weapons in the game, you are going to focus on the skill. This one is Transient Moonlight, and you'll see it has 2 separate FP costs, 15 and 20. You'll also notice it's got a higher attack power through magic than what it has physical. So with the Moonveil, I would make sure you're dual-wielding katanas. But if you come over to enemies and you use your left trigger, you hold it, you are going to sheath the katana, and then with your right bumper, you will release a horizontal slash. And then if you sheath again with your left trigger and you press your right trigger, it releases an overhead vertical slash. And these aren't the greatest enemies in the game to use it against, but you can imagine to an enemy that's weak against magic how much damage that's going to deal. But as well as the skill Transient Moonlight, it's a katana. So if you do dual wield, you can use your left bumper to attack, and it's going to do the double katana slash. So I recommend if you're going to use the Moonveil, you work on leveling up your intelligence, get it quite high. Mine is only 38, so you can make it way stronger than what I've got. And the horizontal slash will be the one that costs 15 FP. The vertical one, the overhead with your right trigger, is the one that will cost 20. It doesn't weigh too much. And if you have the Moonveil in a fully spec'd, maxed out intelligence build, you're going to deal really, really big damage. Especially if you pair it with something like Terra Magica. Although that's going to make it a lot more situational. Weapon number 3 is going to be Death's Poker, and this is classed as a great sword. I feel personally they put it into the wrong weapon category, but you'll see with this one, Ghost Flame Ignition, a 15 FP cost originally, but it does have 10 and 10 in brackets. That's because with this one you can do a follow-up attack. It scales a little bit with magic. Intelligence is D, strength and dex are C. It's got frost build up, which is really nice in this game at a rating of 65. And again, the requirements not too high, 15 strength, 17 dex and 11 intelligence. So if we take a look at the skill on this one, if I press my left trigger, it's going to basically chuck out this ball of flames and it will explode. And it's really powerful just by itself. If I reset the enemies quick, if we come over to this first guy and I use the skill just as it is, it does 1,778. You'll see that it started building up damage, like it did like 3 or 4 ticks, and then it does the explosion at the end. If you do your left trigger and then press your right bumper with a follow-up attack, it releases a line of flames in front of you, so any enemy that walks into that path will take the damage from the flames. And then, if you do the skill when you use your right trigger, it slams it into the floor for a really big explosion. So if I do it again, and I do a light attack, you'll see it ticking up against that enemy. And then if I do another one, if this guy gets close without ruining me with that move, there you go. Big explosive damage. The flames look cool. The weapon's powerful. Although it is going to be a little bit expensive in FP due to this first part costing 15. And then either your right bumper for the line of flames or your right trigger for the big explosion costing an extra 10 each time. So weapon number 4 is the Darkmoon Greatsword. It's going to take you a long time to get your hands on this. You have to do Ranni's quest line. It's another greatsword, and this one is going to be primarily focused on intelligence. It's more of a magic greatsword. So intelligence scaling is B, strength and dex are D. Again, it's got a frost build up similar to Death's Poker, and the attributes are a little bit all over the place. You need 16 strength and 11 dex, which isn't too high, but then you need 38 intelligence. Moonlight Greatsword is a fantastic skill if you have this weapon. It is quite high in its FP cost, but if we take a look at this, if you press your left trigger to do the skill, what the skill is going to do is basically proc the weapon, and then you can just use your right trigger and you can shoot these magic arcs at enemies. You can still do your standard light attacks if you want to, but this has quite good range. Sometimes it doesn't lock on for some reason, it just goes straight. But once you've used that 40 FP and you've set your weapon up, like you've basically cast the magic onto it, yeah, the arcs don't cost any FP whatsoever. So you're only spending to proc the weapon to use these arcs, and then it's just a heavy attack, and you're just going to fire these horizontal arcs at the enemies. And you can deal some serious damage when you hit the right enemies with this, because obviously enemies have different levels of resistances and things like that in the game. So if you're looking for a greatsword, if you're looking for a magic-based greatsword, I highly recommend the Darkmoon Greatsword. So the penultimate weapon for this video is the Sword of Milos. I would rather run this one as an offhand weapon. It scales more with dex than it does with strength, but it does scale with both D strength and C dexterity. It's got a blood loss build up of a rating of 55. I've done a separate video for this weapon on the channel, and that's because there are so many different features to this sword, it's unbelievable. The requirements are 15 strength and 19 dexterity, and the skill Shriek of Milos has a 30 FP cost. So not only does this weapon have a blood loss build up, the skill itself, Shriek of Milos, is actually going to debuff enemies, and it will stagger them as well. It's got quite a big range, as you can see, but at the same time I've now got this red aura around me. It buffs you whilst debuffing the enemies, so it's really good. But another thing about this is, if we kill this enemy, you are going to see a blue sort of aura that comes back to you. On kill, this replenishes 5 FP every single kill, and it does that even when the weapon is in your offhand. so you don't actually need to use it to get FP back. And that's one of the things I really like about this weapon. If you mix this with Blasphemous Blade for a build, if you're using a lot of FP and you just have this as your offhand weapon, it's going to be really, really beneficial to a lot of builds in the game. And then the final weapon for this video is the Royal Greatsword. This is another amazing sword. The only problem is the weight. It weighs 20, is known as a colossal sword, so it's not a great sword this time. It scales with C tier for strength and intelligence, D for dexterity. The attribute requirements are 26 strength, 22 intelligence, 18 dexterity. As you can see, if you look under attack power, it is going to scale with magic. And it does a hefty amount of magic damage, actually more than its physical. Wolf's Assault is like something crazy. It's only got a 20 FP cost as well. So if we take a look at this one, you can see the size of this. There's absolutely no surprise they've called it a colossal sword. But if we come to this enemy here and we use the skill, we're going to do this massive like smash into the ground. And if I actually hit the enemy with it, you'll see that it deals 1429 before it does the explosion. So if I jump up, do the flip, slam it into the ground, you'll see that I've actually just knocked that red guy off the edge of the cliff. But it deals AoE with the explosion. So if I jump up, do the flip, slam it into the ground, and then lift it up out of the ground, it explodes and deals damage to enemies that are nearby. So if I ruin this guy, or at least try to, there we go. So I didn't even hit him with the initial flip, but I did manage to hit him with the explosion. And I think this is such a good sword to use. If we quickly take a look, you'll see, look at the attack power for the right armament number 1, 815. And I'm not even fully spec'd into the stats that it scales with. So if you do spec into strength, intelligence, you get all that stuff buffed up, you're going to deal some serious damage. Like even if you've got the magic scorpion charm and other talismans that are going to help out, this is a really, really powerful weapon. So that was a look at 6 more broken OP weapons you must have in Elden Ring. And that is going to wrap this video up. Let me know your thoughts and stuff in the comments and I'll see you in the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed it.